Today, we're comparing the most popular Tacomas in this year's 2025 lineup. Which one suits your ride?
What's going on, guys? It's Aaron with Upper James Toyota, and today we've got the all-new Tacoma Trailhunter. I'm going to be taking a closer peek just to see exactly what this truck brings to market as our most off-road truck that we have ever made to date. So stay tuned and let's check it out. If you guys are in the market for a new or used vehicle, do not forget to click the link in the top of our description. All right, guys, we're gonna be starting with the powertrain on one of the new Tacoma Hybrids. Now, this is gonna be the same powertrain shared amongst all four different versions of a Tacoma Hybrid you can be getting in today's market, with one big standalone feature on this one. Yes, it's gonna be the most off-road focused, but it's actually gonna be the only Tacoma Hybrid offered with a 6-foot bed, which is a bit interesting when you think about it, seeing how a limited or TRD off-road premium, which I have reviewed before, doesn't come as an option to go for a 6-foot bed if you wanted, that other, use for a truck like this. But with this one in front of me today, it shares the same powertrain. So a 2.4 iForce Max 4-cylinder with a turbo, which makes 326 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque, which is obviously the most powerful engine you can get in one of these trucks. Now, with the Trailhunter being here, I love it versus any other trim level that we offer for a Tacoma Hybrid because I just like the stance of it. I like how it looks super off-roady, or Tacoma says it's very, it's more suited, I guess, for someone who's gonna be doing a lot of overlanding. And now onto the 25 market, with the new 4Runners being out, they offer a Trailhunter for the 4Runner as well. So stay tuned, so I'm definitely gonna be reviewing one of those in the near future. Now, styling-wise, this does look pretty similar to a TRD Pro Tacoma. The only big differences you're gonna be seeing is up front, Toyota is gonna be obviously finished in this cool little bronze color, which I like. I like the fact that they've included this, and I've mentioned this before, from, a Platinum Max Grand Highlander, a Platinum Crown. There's a couple of different vehicles that we offer that kind of has this interesting rose gold finish to it. And if you're taking a closer step to the side profile of this truck, you will actually notice that the badging on the front, which is their heritage badging, has now stayed true, and they've now integrated these all bronze wheels, which I think look pretty cool. And I like how it kind of intertwines a couple different colors, which are maybe different, on today's market to be shown on a vehicle. And obviously with this tire, with this truck being so off-road focused, these are going to be an all territory tire made by Goodyear, which are 33 inches, and in my opinion, look pretty cool. I like the fact that, Toyota is offering this truck, and right from the factory, there's not a whole lot of extra things you would have to do if you're ever going to be putting this, onto the off-road or overlanding it like this truck is supposed to do. And I also like the fact that they've taken out something so simple that's offered, say, on the limited or TRD off-road premium, which are running boards or retractable running boards, depending which way you go, and they've added this rock rail onto the side. So if you ever are taking this onto a mountain, you're never worried if you're going over, say, a big rock, or, the truck is on an angle, because if anything were to hit this underbody, this rock rail is obviously going to stop it from damaging, any bit of, the side profile or the underbit of your new Tacoma, because these do come in at a pretty hefty price tag. Now, a couple things I find very interesting on this Trailhunter. Number one, I love the fact there's a snorkel on your front A-pillar. So if you're ever putting this, into the water, through a river, whatever you want to do, obviously don't go too deep, but, it is pretty interesting that they offer that on this vehicle. And whenever I see a snorkel on the front, I obviously think of a Jeep, I think of a G-Wagon, I think of a Defender. So all of these really off-road focused vehicles, or that, have the potential to go off-road, I love the fact that it's coming from a manufacturer like Toyota. So really good job on that part. I also love the fact that standard, you're getting this massive roof rack, which you can be putting up to 125 pounds in. That is what Toyota says from the factory is the weight that it can carry. Now, this one in front of me is a 2024. I do want to emphasize that. If I had a 25 in front of me, it has a couple different things, like a few other auxiliary switches. It's gonna have like front red stabilizer bars and tow hitches. So small little things like that. But the fact that this truck is so rare, I wanted to obviously review this one being a 2024. And that's a really interesting thing because once we get to the inside of this vehicle, I find it very odd. It's only spec'd in a couple different color schemes. Stay tuned and I'll explain that a little bit more. Now let's check out the rear of this truck. Now, when it comes to the rear of the Trailhunter, there's not a whole lot of, talking points versus the TRD Pro. I do like the fact that it still has this easy access tailgate release situated in your rear brake light. So it's just easy to load stuff and then obviously close it because you hit that button again and this will obviously retract up for you. But I do like the fact that when it's down, it's pretty sturdy, and obviously getting into a truck at this price point, you expect it to be sturdy. So it doesn't feel loose, I guess, in that sense. I've sat in a couple of these different, tongues of the bed, for example, and I don't like sometimes how you jump onto it and it feels, kind of flimsy, I guess. It feels like it's not gonna support you. And, loading a lot of stuff into a truck, you want to obviously make sure that can sustain a little bit of weight while you're throwing stuff in. With that being said, I do like the fact that this is a 6-foot bed, and I've mentioned this before, but I think that getting into a Tacoma is, yes, obviously the smaller of our 2 pickup trucks that we offer right now. However, I think with a 6-foot bed, it just adds a lot more practicality for everyday use. Now, I know that this vehicle and the TRD Pro are obviously, spec'd out for someone to take it off-roading or overlanding or, putting it on some crazy trails and mountains, whatever you want to do. But I like the fact that with all of the off-road stuff that they include on this vehicle, like the shocks, like the skid plates, like the rigid fog lamps, I could go on and on about all the off-road stuff they've added. It gives a lot of practicality for everyday use if this was going to be your daily driver. So I like the fact this is a 6-foot bed, and I wish that Toyota offered that on, the other Tacoma hybrids and, all of our Tacomas, even on the gas side of things, because I think people would buy more of the 6-foot bed options than a 5-foot bed. If you guys have one, let me know down below in the comments. Alrighty guys, let's take a closer peek onto the inside of a Trailhunter. Now, jumping in, first thing I'm gonna say, I wish Toyota offered this in a different interior color. When I first saw this at the auto show, I really didn't know what to think. I thought it was so interesting that Toyota offers the TRD Pro in either black or red as your inside. And I find it really odd how they offer, the highest end off-road vehicle, which is this one here, in the only interior color, which is mineral gray. Definitely not my first choice. I find it very interesting with this like yellowish, almost like insert and trim and stitching they've added onto the inside of one of these. So very interesting choice on Toyota's side. I really hoped that into the 2025 model year, they would change it. They didn't. It's the only color offered for a 2025. They have added a different exterior color now for 25, which is underground. For 24, you were offered white, which is this one obviously, and then bronze oxide, which is just really cool metallic brownie bronze color. But I still think it's really interesting. This is the only interior color, and that's gonna be my one big complaint on the inside because, I just wish it offered more customization. I feel like getting into a vehicle at this price point, you should expect that from a manufacturer. You could, pick what inside color you want, and I think that maybe would be the only mistake on Toyota's end that they did, with designing the inside for the new Trailhunter. Now, with that being said, there's still a lot that I do like about this vehicle, but it's very similar to the TRD Pro or just any other versions of this vehicle. I love the fact it's got JBL sound system, heads-up display, cooled seats, heated steering wheel, all these different off-road controls. I think they've done a very good job at customizing that, and obviously my favorite feature still stands true, the JBL pop-up speaker, which I love, submersible up to 3 feet. The only interesting thing that I have mentioned before, whenever we do offer, any accessories on one of our vehicles, and sometimes our demos, we always put them on just to show customers and clients, what some different things on a vehicle could do, to their next vehicle. I don't like the fact how this, roof basket or rack is right above the sunroof. Now, I understand why they've done that, just in case if you were off-roading and, something fell through, the glass doesn't come shattering down. However, it definitely just makes this, not look as nice, I guess, than one without the basket on top, just like, our crossbars on some of our vehicles, that it definitely, takes away from the fact that, you have a sunroof to open up the inside of one of these vehicles. Now, with, the couple things I'm not a huge fan of out of the way, I do like the fact of just how high up this vehicle feels, and it feels very sturdy driving it. So this is one of the only vehicles I've actually driven because it is used right now on our used lot. Typically when a TRD Pro comes in, we're not allowed to drive it. It's sold to a customer. And I like the fact that when I took this, out for a quick drive, yes, it's fast. B, you're very high up, but it actually feels very comfortable to drive, kind of like a Sequoia. And I didn't really know how Toyota would, manufacture one of these and how they'd actually make the ride quality feel, having a vehicle that's a bit higher up, bigger, and obviously quite powerful. So Sequoia being obviously our most powerful, larger vehicle that we offer, this will be the most powerful truck that we offer, for the Tacoma. And I think that, having those numbers with a vehicle a bit bigger, they've done a very good job to make you still feel very sturdy and comfortable while you're driving it. So I think they've done a pretty good job. Now, I haven't never obviously put one of these onto the off-road or overlanded one of these before. I don't know if I ever will. If I ever do, I'll definitely take you guys along with me, because I think it'd be pretty cool to actually see what all these different crawl controlled MTS modes would actually do, when you're actually driving this in the element that this truck was designed for. Now, that might be a bit of a stretch, but if I ever do get that opportunity, I will for sure take you guys with me. But I want to know your opinion on the inside of this. I think that, sure, it's nice, but looking at the TRD Pro version versus this one, the big reason why I'm gravitated towards the Trailhunter is just for the bed. I like the fact that they've added that 6-foot bed, and I love the rims on this. I think the bronze, intertwined, color scheme with the front, Toyota Heritage badge with the rims, they've done a very good job. But on the inside, I really don't like this interior. So you guys let me know down below in the comments what you think. If you have one, if you've ordered one, if you want to drive one, whatever the case is, let me know, because I'm always interested to see, what consumers think, not just, employees who work for Toyota. I'm always interested to see what you guys have to say. So leave me a comment and I'll be checking those later on. Alrighty, I wasn't going to jump into the back seat of the new Trailhunter. However, I'm going to, just to show you the one thing, and that's going to be space. So I left my seat where I was actually a little bit further, forward than I probably should have been. I am right on the back of these seats. Now, obviously, the Tacoma is not going to be our largest truck that we offer. However, Toyota claims that when they redesigned this back in 2024, they have added an additional 3% of rear space. Now, I don't really think 3% is a huge number and something to really be, boasting about. Sure, it's a little bit larger, but most customers I show this to, they think it's around the same size. Arguably, I'm gonna say it even feels a bit smaller, and I'm not really too sure why, but it doesn't feel large back here. So obviously take that into consideration. If you're gonna be loading this up with 5 people, one in the middle here, they're going to have, a very uncomfortable drive, depending obviously how big they are, but you guys, can take that into consideration for your next vehicle. Now, let's go over price, fuel economy. Let's get right back into that. All right, guys, to wrap things up, let's go over a few very important numbers, starting with fuel efficiency. Now, this being a hybrid and obviously a turbo 4-cylinder, you'd be expecting some pretty decent fuel efficiency, but oddly enough, Toyota rates this at averaging a combined between city and highway 10.3 liters per 100, which is exactly the same for a TRD Pro as well. But the big interesting thing is cost for one of these. Now, this is a 24 model in front of me, but if you're gonna be ordering a new 2025, MSRP for a 25 model year for the Trailhunter here in the Canadian market, $84,589, which is about $6,000 more than the TRD Pro, which is obviously the closest one to this. So interesting that, $6,000 upgrades. I obviously can see where some of that stuff, with an onboard air compressor, the different shocks, different tires, different features, different bed. I can understand maybe how they've justified that price difference, but for the consumer, would you guys pay for that? You let me know down below in the comments. Again, my name is Aiden with Upper James Toyota. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you did like it, do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future Toyota related content, and I'll check you guys out in the next video. What's going on, guys? It's Aiden with Upper James Toyota, and today I'm going to be reviewing the 2025 Tacoma Hybrid. Now, this is going to be my favorite trim level offered on this vehicle, which is going to be a TRD Off-Road Premium. We're going to take a closer peek to see what this truck has outside and in. Let's get into it and check it out. Okay, so we're gonna start up front on the Tacoma Hybrid. Now, this is gonna be powered by a 2.4 4-cylinder mixed with the hybrid motor to be making about 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, which is a 75% increase over the last gen Tacoma. Obviously, you get a lot of that power with the hybrid powertrain and as well as the turbo 4-cylinder engine. I think on the new Tacomas and when the redesign happened on this vehicle, they did a very good job at styling this truck. Now, I know the old generation Tacoma having that V6, a lot of people love that engine, and that's why the vehicle was so popular. So transferring that into a 4-cylinder, and then obviously with this package, getting the hybrid motor or the iForce Max system was definitely going to, spark a few different opinions on this vehicle, but I think they have done a very good job. Now, this color option on this one in front of me today is going to be one of my new favorite colors offered on a Tacoma, and this is underground. So it's kind of like a dark gray. There's no metallic flake to it like the old magnetic gray metallic. They've done a pretty cool job to add some cool colors onto the new Tacoma lineup. Now, taking a closer peek onto the side profile of the Tacoma, one thing I will be saying on this package, which is going to be one of my favorite things on this vehicle, is you're going to be getting Bilstein shocks. Now, this one's obviously made for the off-road, and some people may argue that the Trailhunter is obviously more catered to the off-road or overlanding than this package in front of me, which yes, it is, but obviously getting your hands on a Trailhunter is a little bit difficult, just like the TRD Pro, because those are very, very exclusive. However, looking at these TRD off-road alloy wheels, I think getting these nice 18-inch rims paired up with this color scheme makes the vehicle look pretty well rounded in my opinion. Also on this package, you will be getting directly from the factory here in Canada these cast aluminum running boards, which do say TRD in the middle of them. Between the different running boards options that we do have here at Toyota and what you can be getting from the factory, this is actually going to be my least favorite running board that we offer. I'm a huge fan of the Predator style tube steps, which is basically one step here, one step for your rear passenger, and I think they just look a little bit better than just a straight across running board. One big thing though I will mention on this truck, say versus the old generation Tacoma, and if you've seen my previous videos, you know exactly what I'm about to say, is that you don't see a whole lot of chrome on this truck. Tacoma is blacked out. Anything on the back for the badging wise is also blacked out, minus the iForce Max badge, which to be honest is okay to me because there's no chrome around the windows, mirror caps, side skirts, nothing like that. So I think Toyota has done a pretty good job at styling this vehicle color-wise and obviously, aesthetic-wise as well. The only thing I will be saying that kind of looks a bit weird, I don't know if you guys can see on camera, it kind of looks weird having a short bed. So out of the 4 different trim levels you can be getting on the new Tacoma Hybrid, which are going to be a Limited, a TRD Off-Road Premium, TRD Pro, and a Trailhunter, the only Tacoma Hybrid offered in the long bed version, which is 6 feet, is going to be the Trailhunter. Everything else comes as a 5-foot bed configuration or our short box configuration, which I just find a bit odd. If you look at this vehicle, say versus one that's a regular gas model that's a 6-foot bed, it definitely makes the truck look a little bit smaller. And I really wish that Toyota offered a longer bed option because I think consumers would buy that. Even if it's a few $1,000s more, consumers I think would opt in for it. You guys let me know down below in the comments. Okay, now taking a peek onto the rear end of the Tacoma Hybrid. It's actually interesting. I've never reviewed one of these before because we just haven't gotten too many of these trucks because they are very exclusive from Toyota. And I obviously hope that into the near future, production will ramp up on these because I think a market is definitely there getting this kind of power from a smaller pickup truck like this one in front of me. Just like the Tundra, which I have reviewed a few times beforehand, and I've also mentioned that the Tundras also put in very large letters Tundra on the back tailgate. They have done the same thing with Tacoma in this sense, which I think looks a little bit different. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of it. With this color scheme, I actually think it's a little bit difficult to actually see Tacoma written on the back tailgate of the truck. Now, from Toyota, you actually can get a genuine factory accessory, which is like a little tailgate insert here to basically either black this out or change the colors around for it. Maybe that's something I would do if I optioned one of these trucks. Obviously, that would look pretty good on, say, a color like white, a silver, Terra, which is like an off red or even an orange, but I think that's the one thing I would change on my personal Tacoma. You guys can let me know if you would actually ever change that on yours, if you do have one, or say it's a work truck, something like that. I'm always interested to see what you guys have to say. Now, talking about the bed of this vehicle, first when you get into this is very, very light. I've said this before, it's a composite bed which is carried over from the prior generation Tacoma. And I think what they have done and added features wise into this bed, they've done a pretty good job. So you actually do have a couple cameras situated above that little glass panel, which can slide back and forth to obviously add any air in, kind of like the Tundra, but the full glass doesn't come down. And they've also added pretty good bed lighting in this as well. I've driven one of these in the nighttime. It was a gas model, but actually having that bed lighting there, it definitely makes it a bit easier and more, well-rounded for anything or any use you're actually using one of these vehicles for. So kudos to Toyota for adding that in. Whether you guys are looking for your next vehicle, servicing your current vehicle, or just an existing client of ours, don't forget to mention that you've seen our videos online for a special YouTube-only incentive. Alrighty, let's jump into the 2025 Tacoma Hybrid. Now, being on the inside of here, it really is crazy to me looking at the improvements they have made from the last generation Tacoma. Now, obviously I know that was not offered as a hybrid powertrain, but this one, having that extra power and having just that capability for one of our smaller pickup trucks is pretty cool. So I'm really happy that now we actually finally have a market for this vehicle. A couple interesting things I'm gonna start with on the inside of this vehicle. Number one, I'm really happy the way this one is spec'd out. Reason being is that all of this silver trim and this gunmetal plastic trim they offer here on the inside, you can actually get this in different color configurations. And I've actually only ever seen this one and another one, which is going to be my least favorite, which is this bright blue. It's just kind of an eyesore to me on the inside. I feel like I use that word quite a bit, but it definitely stands out and doesn't really round off the truck like this one does. This kind of all color matches each other. This color kind of matches up with the seats and this interesting pattern that you get on the lumbar support of both of the front seats. So I think that this is the way I would be speccing, mine out if I was ever in the market for one of these vehicles. This being kind of like a middle of the pack Tacoma Hybrid, this does come loaded with quite a lot of features. Now, standard is this 14-inch touch display, which is the same and is going to be the shared for most of our higher end vehicles, like a Sequoia or say like a Tundra. This screen is definitely our most up to date and definitely rounds off this vehicle, because I found that the prior generation Tacoma having that little screen really didn't make the vehicle look like it was in this current year that those vehicles were actually produced in. So I'm happy that Toyota has done that. A couple things that I will say I'm a huge fan of onto the inside is going to be where all of these buttons for your climate controls are actually located. You now have these pretty interesting little dials that actually have these little screws into it, which gives it kind of more of that like truck feel. It's a little bit different than any other, button layout that we offer amongst our entire lineup. So I'm happy that Toyota's done something just a little bit differently. Now, you pair that with this full digital MID screen, which is going to be behind the driver's side wheel. I think having that improvement and having a full digital gauge cluster really makes this interior of the vehicle feel a little bit more premium versus, other vehicles that we have in our lineup. Convenience features wise, there are quite a few onto this Tacoma. I'll mention a few. Heated steering wheel, which is an interesting button location next to my driver's side temperature. You're gonna have three-way heating and cooling on your front passenger seats. And something so small, but something that always frustrated me so much with Toyota was that typically before they would have for a cooled seat, you would have a green light that comes up. And then for a heated seat, it would be an orange light. And I don't really know why that was, but it just made sense for me that heating would be red, cooled would be blue. And now they have that on this vehicle and a few of our other vehicles, but I'm happy they've kind of moved away from that orange and green lighting configuration, because it was just something that always bugged me for, I don't even know what reason that was, but it did. The biggest feature I love on the inside of this vehicle has to be the sound system. You're getting JBLs on this vehicle. This is going to be our best sound system that we offer in our lineup, and the Tacoma has one of the coolest features, just like the new 4Runner will also have. On here on the dash, you can push this little button in, and this little JBL portable speaker will actually pop up. Now you can connect this to obviously a laptop, a phone, whatever you'd like. And Toyota rates this, you can actually bring this in the water with you. It's waterproof up to about 3 feet. Now, if you have one and tested it, please let me know if it actually works. I don't want to do that with a brand new one just in case something goes wrong, but I still think it's a really cool thing to have on a pickup truck, and it uses a special battery so that it's not going to overheat or underheat depending on obviously, where the truck is, because in Canada, yes, summer times, especially on the dash, can get very, very warm. And then the winter time, just like today, it is pretty chilly. Now, if you're done with your speaker, it's pretty simple. All you do, place it back onto the dash, and then you just push down until it clicks, and then obviously it is back in place. So I think just that little feature is just one of those little things that sets it apart from, say competitors on the market currently. A couple things though, I will say that I think is a bit interesting with what Toyota has done. Number one, it has to be with this shift knob. Now, I do know this is obviously shared with a Tundra, but it's interesting because you actually don't have a lot of space behind the shifter to actually a couple of your climate control modes, being your AC, fan speed, and where the air is actually blowing. So if you're kind of behind it, it's a bit weird to actually flip up the switches because this is just kind of in your way. Now, if the car was actually shifted into drive, for example, yes, it makes it so much more, accessible. But in park, you kind of have to either go behind it or above it or to the side of it. And it's just a little bit interesting. Obviously, it's something that you could get accustomed to, but just an interesting thing that Toyota has done. Storage-wise on one of these versus say a Tundra, obviously it's going to have a little bit less than a Tundra. However, you still do have a decently large center console here with a nice little cutout down here with this little handle. And I know that was such a controversial topic when they redesigned the Tacomas. I actually like it though, because having this, I don't know if I've ever sat here and held onto it before, but at least it's something that if you actually are taking this TRD off-road premium to say, the trails, or you are going to off-road it, it kind of is cool to have that for either your passenger or the driver to hold on to it while you're on the off-road. All right, now jumping into the rear of the Tacoma versus a Tundra, obviously space is going to be a little bit squished versus the full-size Tundra. Yeah, I'm really not the most comfortable back here. This actually isn't the furthest the seat can go back. It can go back a little bit more, but even just side to side and looking out the window, I just feel like I'm right there. So I'm not too sure if, say, loading this up with 5 people would be the most comfortable ride. However, for a smaller family or for someone who doesn't need a full-size pickup truck, this could definitely be a pretty good fit for you. Other than say a couple USB-C ports back here and a 120 volt charging block, just in case you want to throw a computer or something like that back here up for a charge, that's kind of the only convenience features you'll be getting. I don't think that this vehicle, say, would need some of the features like the Tundra has, say on a Platinum or a 1794, getting those rear cooled and heated seats. I don't know if that's something that I'm gonna miss in this vehicle, because I'm not too sure of how many people would actually be in this vehicle at any given time, say versus our full-size pickup truck. Other than that though, it's still nice back here, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with the way this truck is laid out. There's nothing I'm gonna be complaining about. Getting into our smaller pickup truck that we do offer, that yes, space between this and a Tundra are drastically different. But if you do own a Tacoma, I'm interested to see, is that a full-size family vehicle for you? Is that something you're loading up all the seats with and your family and say the dog and going up north to the cottage? That's just always been the interesting part of having a smaller pickup truck, is that I really want to know from you guys what consumers are using this truck for, and how you like that in your everyday life. All right guys, to wrap things up on the Tacoma Hybrid. Now, these are going to be starting off in the mid 64 range and can work all the way up to the mid 84 range. So quite a big price difference between only 4 trim levels on this vehicle. This one here though in front of me, a TRD Off-Road Premium, comes in at an MSRP of $66,505. Obviously you have to add freight and PDI, dealer admin fees, licensing, and tax. But other than that, that's a pretty good bang for your buck on what you're actually getting with a vehicle like this and all the features that it has on the inside and out. Now, fuel efficiency is going to be that huge thing on a Tacoma because obviously coming from a V6, you're still going to want some good fuel efficiency onto, say, the hybrid version and a smaller engine. So one of these combined is going to average about 10.1 liters per 100. The other 3 trim levels are going to be averaging a mere 10.3. So a little bit higher on those ones just due to bigger wheels and obviously a little bit more weight. Now, if you're in the market for a new Tacoma Hybrid or you're interested in getting into one, please definitely give us a call so we can help you out on your, future Toyota purchase. My name's Aiden with Upper James Toyota. Please do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our future Toyota related content, and we'll check you guys out in the next video. Could this be the coolest Tacoma on today's current market? I'm gonna take a close in-depth review to see exactly what this 2025 TRD Pro Tacoma has to offer. My name's Aiden with Upper James Toyota, and let's get into this truck. If you guys are in the market for a new or used vehicle, do not forget to click the link in the top of our description. Now, let's talk TRD Pro. Now, nothing is really new. This used to be a trim level offered on the prior generation Tacoma. However, a few big differences onto the new design. It's a new powertrain and it's a new body style, outside and in. They have made some exceptional changes onto this Tacoma. So bye-bye to the 3.5 liter V6 naturally aspirated on that prior generation Tacoma, which really didn't make any significant numbers if you asked me. But in comes this new 2.4 liter 4-cylinder paired up with a turbo and our iForce Max hybrid system, which would be making about 326 horsepower paired up with 465 pound-feet of torque going through an 8-speed automatic gearbox, which are some pretty serious numbers from a little 4-cylinder. Now, talking front-end styling, I love the fact that Toyota has kind of stuck with their roots and they have kept in some things that they added into the prior generation Tacoma. One of those being your front and rear turn signal. So your front turn signals and your rear turn signals will both be sequential. And I love the look of that it kind of starts on one end and moves into the middle. I've always thought about that on those older Mustangs. Growing up as a kid, I'd always see those, and seeing those turn signals start on one end and move towards the end of that bumper, I thought was pretty cool. And I love the fact that that is now on this vehicle in front of me today. I also love the fact that Toyota has decided to take exactly what came from the Tundra, which was this LED light bar. So underneath your massive Toyota, that's written across your front bumper here. I love the fact that this light bar, it's only exclusive to one of these vehicles, just like the Tundra was, but I love that. I love the fact that you can kind of have this, really, standalone feature on this vehicle. Now, obviously, I do know you can have that on the Trailhunter, but I've only ever seen one of those ever in my life. We've never had a new one arrive at our dealership yet. And if we ever do get one, I want to show that off because obviously that looks pretty different versus this very off-road beefy style TRD Pro that is here today. I also love the fact that Toyota has integrated these rigid fog lamps that are gonna sit parallel to the actual road ahead of you. And I like that because it's gonna give you more visibility off the front end versus, say, a fog light, situated more to the corners of the bumpers or that are typically round from Toyota. So I love the fact that, they've kind of changed around that different design to obviously give more practicality and use out of, the front lighting of a vehicle, which is definitely important. Now, touching upon a couple things that I really do love on this vehicle. You see TRD Pro written a lot on the outside. It's written here on the actual corners of your headlights here. It's written up here. It's written on the inside, on the back. I will touch over a few of those spots, but I think it's pretty cool that there's all these little, little snippets of just TRD Pro throughout this vehicle, because obviously getting into one of these, it is a pretty exclusive truck. Now, talking about this truck, I actually love it in white, and I love it in white even more because I love the fact that they have gone with gloss black fender flares. Same with your front bumper. There's not a whole lot of matte black plastic you will see anywhere on this truck. And I love, love, love the decision Toyota has made to integrate this split roof. So I love the fact It's white with the black roof, and obviously that's shared amongst, a Corolla hatchback, a specific RAV4, Crown Signias, depending on how you're speccing your vehicle. I love the fact that, something like that typically is not on one of our pickup trucks. And I think that having that black roof with your black mirror caps, your fender flares, your, hood scoop on your front hood, I love that the vehicle just looks way more well-rounded, and it's not just one little bit here and one little bit there. They've done a pretty good job to really, make this vehicle aesthetically look very pleasing. You guys can let me know down below in the comments what you think. Now, before we get to the rear end of this Tacoma, I'm going to talk about tires and shocks, because obviously the Tacoma Hybrid being offered in two different off-road styles. You can go TRD Pro or you can go Trailhunter. A couple big differences between those two packages. Number one, shocks on this bad boy are going to be Bilsteins. Now, that's a pretty good shock, and that was what was on the prior generation TRD Pro also. However, moving up to that Trailhunter grade, you'll be getting old man emu shocks. Now, I've never driven a Trailhunter, nor have I seen that vehicle. So when I do get one, I will definitely do a review on it just to see exactly how this one drives versus that one, because obviously they're going to be pretty similar in the sense that both those are very off-road capable, and that's typically what people would probably do getting one of these trucks. However, I love just the look of this actual tire. I love the 18-inch, very off-road looking tire. You can see with the grooves on this bad boy that this could take on some different terrain. So I love the fact that Toyota, shows a very off-road appearance, but they're also giving a lot of capabilities directly from the manufacturers. You're not having to upgrade tires and shocks and all of these interesting things, far and through. I really think that they have done a cool job to include that, and something you're not paying anything extra for. Now, wrapping back to the rear end of this vehicle and talking about the rear tailgate of one of these new TRD Pro Tacomas. I love the fact that, this gloss black theme has really intertwined, and they've done a really good job to show that throughout the entire vehicle. I also love the fact that Toyota has now integrated a very easy and accessible way to get into, the bed of your truck by simply pushing this little button situated on your rear brake light. Obviously, your tailgate has now come down. And I also like the fact that, we offer that on other vehicles too, just like the Tundra. But obviously, being in the car business and seeing other manufacturers, I love the fact that having something like that, yes, it's mechanical, but I love the fact that theoretically, I could just come over here and sit, and it still feels very, very sturdy. So you don't have to, worry about only putting, light things on your tailgate. You can actually put quite a bit on this bad boy, and obviously not have to worry about, it maybe breaking or having to replace anything like that. And then simply to close it, hit that same button that you did to open it, and there you go. Your TRD Pro is back and closed, and you can, take all the stuff that you had in the bed and go inside or put it in the garage. I like the fact that TRD Pro is written in massive letters on your rear, tailgate here. However, I don't like the fact that it color matches the color that you get your vehicle in. I wish that they would offer this, that if you got the white version, this would be, just like the new 4Runners, this, integrated gloss black bold letters that actually come out from the actual paint and the panel of the actual vehicle to really show a different depth of, showing other people what you're in when you're currently driving on the road. Other than that though, they've done a great job, an absolute phenomenal job. I think that this now is a TRD Pro that I see the value in, that I would actually want to buy this vehicle. I didn't think the old generation really gave me that. There was really nothing on the inside or outside that I was really, super in favor for. So you guys let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. All right, now jumping into the TRD Pro Tacoma, I'm gonna touch on something that I typically don't really chat a whole lot about in my videos, and that's gonna be the seats. Now, obviously I mentioned, the seats are leather, they're soft tex, so on and so forth. They're cool, they're heated, the list can go on and on. However, just talking comfortability wise, these seats have to be one of our most comfortable seats we have ever put in one of our vehicles. And I've mentioned this in a few other vehicles that we've been in. I would say the closest thing to this would actually be the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max or the Platinum. I think those seats definitely hug you very well. However, just the actual look and the feel of these seats, I feel so comfortable sitting in them. Now, the seats is a really, really cool talking point. These come with isodynamic performance seats. So on the back of these carbon back, the exposed carbon back seats, you can actually adjust how stiff, you want your seat to feel. So it could kind of be a bit more floaty, so you're not feeling as many bumps as, you know, a typical setting, you could obviously make it very stiff. So obviously you're feeling a lot more of the road or the terrain that you're on. I think that is a really, really cool feature. And to be honest, when I originally saw this vehicle, a video that someone posted on Instagram, I saw the backs of these seats and I was like, there's no way. There's no way that Toyota put that in, you know, a manufactured vehicle that's not an add-on or, you know, a very, very limited special edition. Obviously, getting a TRD Pro is maybe not the easiest, but this is just how they come. So I think that was a very cool surprise, at least that I had when I actually saw one of these in person. Now, sitting in one of these, they've done a very good job just to lay this out like a typical Tacoma. I like the fact that you see a lot of the differences between TRD Pro and just the regular stuff that you would get in a more fully loaded, you know, Tacoma. I love the fact that this like little exposed, you know, carbon looking material is on your dash here. It's got Toyota embroidered on, you know, in front of your passenger, which I love. That's black on top, a little red underneath to kind of show you that, you know, the TRD Pro is always that like black and red or like the black and orange. So I like how they've kind of continued that theme, especially with all the TRD on the inside of this. Just like your steering wheel, it's got that, it's kind of funny, that little center racing stripe to let you know exactly, you know, if your lines are actually straight with obviously the tires on the road. You've got your TRD shift knob, your start button, the floor mats, the TRD embroidered in your actual seats. I think what they've done to really, you know, exaggerate the fact that you're, you know, not in a typical Tacoma, they've done a pretty cool job. Pair that up with obviously all the new screens and new safety sense features, JBL sound system, with one of my new favorite features that we can offer on any one of our vehicles, which is our pop-up JBL sound system. I think that what they have done to really cater this vehicle for, you know, an everyday use or just someone who wants something different on today's market, Toyota has done a really, really good job. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. I'm gonna jump into the back seats because I've always said this, getting into a TRD Pro, Toyota claims that the new Tacomas are 3% bigger than the prior generation, which if you're gonna ask me, that is very minimal and it's not something why I would buy one of these. Obviously I wanna love the look, love the drive, love the features, but I'm interested to see what these rear seats will do for any of your rear passengers. So give me 1 second and I'll be right back. All right, this will be interesting. Let's try and get into the back of this new TRD Pro. Now, I had to move the seat up twice just in order to actually fit back here. Now, I will tell you this, being someone who is a bit taller, my headroom is nothing great. I would not be buying this truck if I'm ever gonna be loading this up with 4 people or 5 people, because that would be a very, very adventurous way to go about having this vehicle. If you had smaller kids, maybe that's more manageable for your everyday life. However, looking at these back seats, I love the look of them. There's nothing about this that seems normal in Toyota's world. This is something that we typically never offer on one of our vehicles. And it is pretty cool that this is just the way this vehicle comes from the factory. I think, you know, just the looks of it alone is a buying feature for me. I don't know what that is, but I think it's just so cool that they've added this onto this truck. However, practicality wise, yeah, I'm not that comfortable. I know what their idea behind this was, to add this little, you know, insert, which is actually pretty soft on the back of it too, just in case your legs can fit there. But unfortunately, there's really no way for me to sit comfortably back here. I'm kind of right on the edge of my headroom. I'm basically on the edge of my, you know, leg room as well. And anyone that's driving this truck in front of me would need to be a bit smaller because I need this seat as far up as I can go. So to be honest, do I agree with Toyota that the space has increased 3%? Probably not. They may have me on, you know, cubic feet if you want to measure it like that, but obviously people typically don't measure stuff in cubic feet. You typically have to go in to see it, and I would not be able to tell the difference between 220 versus 225 cubic feet. So if you're one of those people, I'm jealous, because at least for me, I can't tell a huge difference. And if I was in the market to get one of these, this would simply be for me and the person that I'm with, because I don't think, you know, any rear passengers would be that comfortable back here. I also didn't touch upon the fact that this is featured with black interior. You can get this with the red interior. I've seen it once at the auto show. I think it looked pretty cool, but it's a very bright red. If you know our Camry red, it's basically the exact same thing. So the cockpit red, which was obviously then shared on the old generation Tacoma and the TRD Pro version of the Tundra, that was a pretty cool feature. And obviously typical that most vehicles come with either, a black or a tan interior these days, but significantly more on the black side. I like that you have that customization to go red if you wanted to. However, I like the way this is spec'd. If I'm getting a TRD Pro Tacoma, this is my dream spec sitting in front of me. You guys can let me know down below in the comments. So let's wrap things up talking about some numbers on the TRD Pro Tacoma. Now, one of these bad boys, even though it's powered by a 4-cylinder, fuel efficiency is not going to be the greatest. Toyota's going to say this will average a combined 10.3 liters combined between city and highway driving, which I guess isn't terrible in the pickup, grand scheme of things. However, for the smaller pickup side, this being a hybrid and only a 4-cylinder, maybe it's not the greatest between other manufacturers on the market. And then we talk about price. One of these bad boys will be coming in at a starting MSRP $78,674. And it's kind of funny what Toyota's been doing with different MSRPs, because typically it would be $78,500 or $78,800. It's really interesting how they're adding these, weird dollar amounts towards the end of their numbers. I don't really know why they're doing that, but it definitely makes it interesting and fun for me to actually remember every single one of these MSRPs that I am shooting. Now, if you guys are in the market for TRD Pro Tacoma, let me know. Also, let me know if you want one / if you have one. I'm always wanting to know what customers are looking for, if they've driven it, if they think it's worth it, or if they'll get that prior generation. So leave a comment down below. I'm gonna be going through some of these in our future videos. Again, my name is Aiden with Upper James Toyota. If you did like this video, please do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our future Toyota related content, and I'll check you guys out in the next video.